The air in Death Valley is not just hot. It screams of desolation. A perfect blank slate where history is supposed to have ended, not begun. But beneath the cracked ancient salt pan, something has been silently waiting. Something that should not exist. A structure, metallic and impossibly precise, has just been pulled from the earth, radiating a silence more terrifying than any noise. This is not a fossil, not a relic. It is a machine, a power source, and the readings defy every law of physics we thought we knew. What if everything you learned about the dawn of civilization is a calculated, devastating lie? You are about to see the evidence that proves an advanced society once operated a nuclear reactor in the heart of North America, thousands of years before the first pharaoh. Hit that subscribe button now to unlock the full truth that global institutions are scrambling to contain. And tell me in the comments, what energy source are they really hiding from us? The Death Valley Anomaly. The Mojave Desert had always been a keeper of secrets, a vast, scorched amphitheater where the very rock formations tell a story of immense, slow-motion tectonic violence. But the story unearthed in the last quarter has been anything but slow. The discovery wasn't made by archaeologists with brushes and careful trowels, but by a specialized geothermal imaging team who were actually hunting for new sustainable energy vents deep within the Funeral Mountains fault line, expecting nothing more than superheated steam and complex mineral deposits. What they found, 22 feet beneath a seemingly unremarkable stretch of alluvial fan gravel near Badwater Basin, was a crystalline layer that shimmered with an isotopic signature utterly alien to the surrounding 1.7 billion-year-old metamorphic rock base. The initial reading was dismissed as a sensor malfunction, a statistical ghost caused by high magnetic interference, because the resulting analysis suggested a localized presence of heavy, highly ordered, non-native elements. This wasn't just metal. It was an incredibly dense matrix of what appeared to be synthesized unobtainium-240, a fictional element from a 1970s sci-fi concept, now registering definitively on their most sensitive mass spectrometers. The anomaly formed a perfect, seamless dome, almost 50 meters in diameter, which had somehow remained structurally intact beneath millions of years of desert erosion and seismic shift, completely untouched by the violent geological history of the region. When the excavation finally broke through the outer shell, an event captured on grainy, now viral satellite footage, the air pressure differential alone nearly collapsed the exploratory borehole, sucking sand and debris violently inward. The cavern revealed a polished, obsidian-like interior structure, unnervingly smooth and black, completely non-reflective, absorbing all light and casting an unsettling, palpable void that even the powerful LED lights could not fully penetrate. The core finding, situated dead center within the structure, was a massive cylindrical object they provisionally dubbed the core nullifier, a colossal, non-corroding metal block patterned with precise hexagonal indentations that looked unnervingly like a cooling jacket. The surrounding geology, primarily ancient carbonate banks and metamorphic schists, showed definitive, if localized, evidence of vitrification. Rock melted, cooled, and turned to glass by an instantaneous burst of colossal heat, an effect generally associated with nuclear airbursts or hypervelocity impacts, not natural desert phenomena. This vitrification was not widespread. It was confined to the immediate cavity perimeter, suggesting a contained, explosive, or ultra-high temperature event that had occurred inside the structure. Yet the structure itself remained immaculate. The mystery deepened with the discovery of trace organic matter interwoven within the vitrified perimeter. Microbial remnants, frozen in time and heat-shocked, that shared no genetic material with any known extremophile life found today in the supersaline, high-temperature environment of Death Valley. This suggested a contained, living ecosystem existed around the device at the moment of its catastrophic shutdown, an ecosystem relying on the reactor itself, perhaps not for heat, but for a constant, regulated flow of energy. The geological dating was even more perplexing, pushing the crystalline layers formation back at least 200,000 years, shattering every established timeline for complex engineering on the planet, and making the natural Oklo reactor in Gabon, at 2 billion years old, suddenly seem like a primitive, messy experiment compared to this engineered perfection. The reactor's mechanism. The structural analysis of the core nullifier and its surrounding apparatus has become the singular, all-consuming focus of a joint international task force, operating under a veil of extreme secrecy, attempting to reverse engineer a technology that simply should not be possible. The device itself appears to be a reactor, not in the sense of a modern fission or fusion machine that generates heat to boil water, but something far more elegant and subtle, a direct cold energy converter, harnessing a principle yet to be codified in human physics. The hexagonal coolant jacket, upon closer inspection, contains residual fluid composed of a super-heavy water isotope not found naturally in any concentration on Earth, a primordial form of deuterium oxide that indicates the reactor utilized a low-temperature, high-pressure process. This fluid, which they've tentatively named delta water, shows minimal signs of exposure to radiation, leading experts to postulate that the reaction was entirely aneutronic, meaning it generated virtually no highly penetrating, dangerous neutrons, making it exponentially cleaner and safer than even theoretical modern fusion concepts. Dr. Eris Thorne, the lead structural physicist on the team, leaked a single, heavily encrypted memo hinting at the impossible efficiency of the core material. The nullifier's material, a complex matrix of carbon allotropes and stabilized metallic hydrogen, seemed to be actively manipulating zero-point energy, or some localized quantum field, drawing power directly from the vacuum of space-time itself, rather than consuming fuel in the traditional sense. The device's shutdown, based on the residual energy signatures, was not a meltdown or a gradual depletion, but an instantaneous, deliberate, hard stop, like throwing a master switch that completely erased the core's energy potential, leaving behind only the vitrified rock as an external shockwave signature. The most unnerving element remains the control obelisks, 4 slender, monolithic columns of polished basalt, intricately etched with geometric patterns that glow faintly under ultraviolet light, positioned at the cardinal points around the core. These carvings are not symbolic or decorative. They appear to be a form of 3-dimensional, hyper-complex data storage, akin to a non-linear language. Efforts to translate or even read this information have been frustratingly futile. The patterns shift and refract light in non-Euclidean ways, suggesting they are meant to be interpreted by a method entirely outside human sensory perception, perhaps through infrasound or a focused magnetic field. One theory gaining traction is that the structure was not designed to power a city, but to perform a single, colossal task: terraforming. Death Valley, with its history of ancient seas and volatile hydrogeology, presents the perfect stage for such a device. Could the reactor have been manipulating the regional climate, perhaps stabilizing a water cycle or controlling tectonic activity? The immense controlled energy burst that caused the vitrification may have been the final, decisive act of a civilization trying to prevent an impending natural cataclysm, using the device as a sacrificial energy sink to stabilize the entire North American continent before their own inevitable disappearance. Forbidden history. The implications of an engineered power source this advanced, dating back to a time when Homo sapiens was barely emerging from the caves of Africa, violently rewrites the textbook of pre-Columbian and even pre-Ice Age history. It suggests a civilization, the ancients of the nullifier, existing not just before written record, but before the geological events that defined our current epoch, a people who possessed a mastery over matter and energy that makes our modern atomic age look like flint knapping. The location, deep in the North American desert, also destroys the Eurocentric narrative of civilization's linear march from Mesopotamia and Egypt. This discovery forces an intense re-evaluation of numerous archaeological anomalies previously dismissed as natural formations or primitive religious sites. Could the monumental earthworks of the Mississippian culture, like the massive Cahokia mounds, which are aligned to astronomical events, be crude, later attempts to replicate the massive power distribution grids of the nullifier ancients? What about the hundreds of unexplained subterranean stone chambers across the American Northeast, long attributed to Native American tribes, but sharing the same high-density, non-local basalt found in the reactor's obelisks? The most immediate historical link being drawn is to the indigenous creation myths themselves, particularly those of the Hopi and Navajo nations, which speak of successive world ages destroyed by fire and water, and the emergence of ant people, or star people, who possessed powerful knowledge and lived in underground cities before the final Great Flood. These narratives, often relegated to folklore, now take on a horrifying new significance. Were these myths not fantasies, but fragmented generational memories of a civilization that literally powered their subterranean existence with a device like the nullifier reactor? The details in some narratives about shining stones that produced warmth and light perfectly mirror the faint, residual luminescence of the basalt control columns. Furthermore, the very concept of a fully developed, pre-Ice Age, nuclear-capable society challenges the fundamental assumptions about human evolution and cognitive development. Did these people evolve separately? Or were they the forgotten, successful branch of early humanity who reached technological singularity and then vanished? The global distribution of other inexplicable, out-of-place artifacts, from the intricate Antikythera mechanism to the perplexing Baghdad battery, and even the natural Oklo reactor, which some argue was merely used by a non-human intelligence, now look like faint, residual echoes, bits of technological detritus left over from a world-spanning civilization that collapsed and was deliberately buried by the shifting sands of deep time. The political and cultural impact is already being felt, with Native American sovereign nations demanding full control over the Death Valley site, asserting that it is a direct, irrefutable link to their oldest, most sacred ancestral knowledge. A claim that clashes directly with the U.S. government's immediate classification of the area as a national security exclusion zone. The debate is not just about ownership of land, but ownership of history itself. If the site proves that North America was the cradle of an ancient, global technological zenith, it completely reframes the modern geopolitical landscape and the spiritual, ancestral weight of the continent's first peoples. The global impact. The discovery of the Death Valley Ancient Reactor is not merely an archaeological find. It is a seismic event that destabilizes the foundation of modern science, history, and theology. The first and most critical impact is on energy research. The reactor's aneutron cold energy conversion model, once fully understood, promises an era of limitless, clean energy, a genuine quantum leap that would render fossil fuels and even modern fission reactors instantaneously obsolete, solving the global climate and energy crises in a single stroke. This imminent revolution, however, is met with resistance from established global energy players who see their trillion-dollar infrastructure evaporating overnight, creating a covert but intense geopolitical shadow war over access to the site's intellectual property. The core nullifier's material composition, particularly the stabilized metallic hydrogen, could revolutionize space travel. Metallic hydrogen, theorized to be a room-temperature superconductor and a hyper-efficient rocket propellant, is currently impossible to synthesize outside of crushing laboratory pressures. The nullifier ancients mastered it, suggesting that their civilization was likely interplanetary, or at least capable of easy sustained travel beyond Earth's orbit, a concept supported by the reactor's non-Earth specific location in a region that was once a shallow sea. The sheer scale of their engineering suggests they might have been capable of migrating off-world during the cataclysm that destroyed their civilization, leaving the reactor behind as a silent, powerful testament to their existence. The scientific community is currently grappling with the challenge of translating the data on the control obelisks. Some theoretical physicists, looking at the non-Euclidean nature of the etchings, believe the patterns are not a language, but a direct mathematical map of a higher dimensional reality, a blueprint for manipulating space-time itself. If this hypothesis is correct, the reactor was not just a power source, but a device capable of opening stable, localized wormholes or manipulating gravitational fields, placing the ancients of the nullifier in the realm of science fiction gods. This realization has sparked a furious new wave of esoteric research, blending theoretical physics with ancient religious texts in a desperate search for contextual clues. The public reaction, fueled by the slow, censored release of information, is shifting from fascination to existential dread. The evidence of a civilization that reached technological singularity and then abruptly vanished, possibly due to their own uncontrolled power, serves as a chilling, immediate warning to our own precarious modern society. The new scientific imperative is no longer simply how the reactor worked, but why it was shut down so violently and completely. What final threat or error was so profound that they chose to sacrifice their greatest achievement in a self-imposed apocalyptic shutdown? The very existence of this machine forces humanity to confront the terrifying possibility that technological advancement, instead of being a guarantee of progress, is instead a cyclical path leading inevitably to a hard, violent reset. The ongoing analysis of the core nullifier's radiation signature is the final piece of the puzzle, and the most disturbing. The background radiation is virtually nil, confirming the aneutronic hypothesis, but the trace particles they do detect are isotopes that only occur in hypervelocity collisions with exotic matter, hinting at an external, non-Earth-based origin for the material. Or, perhaps, evidence of a conflict that transcended the planet. The desert wind that whistles across the excavation site now carries a different sound for those involved. Not the whisper of desolation, but the echoing roar of a history far greater and far more terrifying than anything recorded in stone or scroll, forcing the entire world to look at the vast empty sands of Death Valley and realize we are not the first, and may not be the last, to walk this earth with fire in our hands.